It is 7 o'clock. We are going to start. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. Recorded, yes. Homework, yes. Hopefully, you have gotten to that. Put any questions you have in the chat to me and Forrest. I wanted to follow up on a question we had about drinking from a rain barrel. So proceed at your own risk. The stuff you're at risk of having in your rainwater barrel is bird poop, asbestos, lead, anything that would come off your roof and go through the gutters and stuff leading into your rain barrel. You can treat it. There is no magic bullet to treat water coming out of a rain barrel. There is not one way to get rid of particulate matter, to get rid of chemicals, and to get rid of the biologics, the viruses and the bacteria. I would not recommend it. Try treating it. I would filter it and I would treat it with chlorine and I would use it to water down your pee or clean with, but I wouldn't do much more. I don't believe you can make it drinkable without being sort of a chemist. All right, we're going to get started. We have preparing with neighbors and how your community prepares. So preparing with neighbors. Being prepared for an emergency begins with hello, and it is all about neighbors. This is all about neighbors today. It's so interesting. Know your neighbors, plan together, and be ready. Your neighbors in general are not folks that you gather with for birthdays and holidays and, big celebrations. Maybe you do, great. If you're living next to folks that you enjoy that much, wonderful. But in general, family and friends are the folks that we turn to for those kinds of things. But family and friends are not going to be around when you have a disaster. So neighbors are your support system for many disasters. So you really have to get past that whole, I'm just going to hang out with and rely on my family and friends. Unless they live next door, that is not your only support system, and it's not your support system for a lot of disasters. If you had a house fire, probably not family and friends are going to be there at 4 a.m. throwing a blanket over your shoulders as you're standing outside in the rain watching your house burn. It will be neighbors. If there's crime in your neighborhood, probably not family and friends that live far away are going to help you fight it. You've got to organize with neighbors and take care of that as much as you can. Power line falls on your car in the driveway. Probably going to be turning to neighbors to help out with that one. If you have a flat tire, if you are stuck at work or stuck somewhere and you have a pet that's home alone, the person that can help you out the easiest with something like that is a neighbor. So really think about turning to neighbors helping neighbors. After a disaster, we will pull together as neighbors, just like every community does. I'm going to talk about the difference between an emergency and a disaster. An emergency are the things we kind of talked about. Your sewer backs up, your water main breaks, the stuff that's kind of local and pretty much manageable by either the folks that are around or first responders in the city. A disaster is something so big that it overwhelms the first responders. Large earthquake, catastrophic flooding, nobody's prepared for that. Nobody has enough people on duty for that kind of thing. I've done a little bit of reading on this, the American rugged individualism, that whole idea. A, it's not all that true, and B, it is not helpful at all. And we can kind of see that with our response to the pandemic. We are interdependent. We need each other, and more so all the time. This is from the Boston Marathon. The person next to you is your first responder. You are the help until help arrives. Why are we the help until help arrives? Because there's a lot of people in Seattle and there's only about 200 first responders on duty at one time. And the folks you have on hand are the folks you're going to have for quite a while if it's a big enough disaster, because their replacements, the next shift, can't get into the city to help. Very few of them live in Seattle because it is so expensive to live here. What we learned from the Boston Marathon was a lot about tourniquets. The fact is, you can't make a tourniquet, a homemade tourniquet, and let it be any good. You cannot pull the belt tight enough. It's just not possible. There's a course to help you become a better bystander. It's called Stop the Bleed. I've got some information on the handouts about how you can take that class as kind of the next learning step in your journey. We will be teaching classes sometime, hopefully the end of this year. Think about that class, become a really, really good, qualified, experienced bystander. So stop the bleed. This is how the city is organized. This is the preparedness pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid is you and your household, and it's the biggest because that's where you get most of your supplies. Your water and food should be stored there. Any medications should be stored there. How you're going to handle emergency toileting should be there. Next level is your neighbors. This is what you can get from your neighbors, and this is why we're talking about it in this class. You can look out for one another. You can coordinate cooking so that you're not all trying to boil water on your barbecue grill or whatever it is you have. You can share resources. Maybe the person down the street is a nurse. Maybe the person that lives in the apartment below you can watch your pet while you sweep up your apartment or whatever. Everybody has skills and everybody will be able to bring something to the table to help out. So, who you look to help after a disaster is your neighbors. So neighbors can turn off gas. If there's a house on fire on the block, there's a good chance that if you all have gas that you're going to need to turn off the gas. So they can turn off gas for you. They can turn off the water, prevent the water in your pipes from getting contaminated. Neighbors are great for just picking everybody's brains. Somebody will remember what y'all are supposed to be doing. Two heads are better than one. Gather together and figure out what it is you're supposed to be doing. And then neighbors can be sent out to check on the folks that aren't showing up. They aren't coming out of their house. Well, let's go check on Mr. Smith. He's kind of elderly, doesn't get around well anymore. Let's check on him. Everyone has skills. All your neighbors have skills. They vary, but everybody has them. I have included information on how to request a class for you and your neighbors. It is a really good idea to get together with your neighbors and prepare together. You can compare prices. You can, some people like to buy things in bulk. You can do that. Maybe somebody has a large van or a large truck and a bunch of you need water. Send somebody to Costco or Cash and Carry or Smart Food Service. Maybe you do a big water supply run for everybody on your block. But if you prepare together, it helps keep you accountable. Again, you share ideas. It just kind of increases the energy around getting prepared. So you can prepare together. And then once you've got your households prepared, you prepare as a neighborhood. The program that we use here in Seattle is called Seattle Neighborhoods Actively Prepare, SNAP, SNAP. On your handout is a link to request training. And somebody like me, I'm one of the SNAP trainers, somebody like me will show up on Zoom now because that's how we do stuff. We used to come to your living room, but now we're virtual. And we will talk to your neighbors. We can start at the basic level of how to get your household prepared. And then once you're ready, we can talk to you about how to get your neighborhood prepared. Not your neighborhood, I'm sorry, your block basically prepared. Think about SNAP training. If you're the one organizing that, make sure that you book a follow-on class. Because kind of like this class, if there's no follow-on class, if nobody's holding you accountable, if you don't have to tune back in 2 weeks and tell everybody that you haven't done anything on your to-do list, it tends to go by the wayside. So use one another to stay motivated and to keep moving down that checklist. Neighbors are really good for that. So if you're the host, make sure you have that great initial meeting and then you keep following up once every couple weeks, once a month, whatever it is you agree to, but keep the ball rolling. We've talked about the two lower levels of the pyramid, and now we're going to talk about the hubs. So this is where the community, larger than your block, the community gets organized. And the reason for hubs is that you and your household and you and your neighbors, maybe you're listening to an emergency radio. Maybe you're getting some information that way. But there's probably not a lot of information coming, and you probably don't know a lot of what to do. And the city, in the first probably week after a large disaster, the city is working really hard to get their feet underneath them, to find out what's going on when they don't have great communications, to figure out the hardest hit areas, to send the first responders there, to do search and rescue, to fight fires. They're dealing with intense life-saving stuff. They don't have a lot of time or energy to put information out. So that's where the hubs come into play. And so we're going to talk about the emergency communication hubs, which is how Seattle prepares on a community level. We are social creatures. I've said that more than once during these sets of classes. We are social creatures. We will naturally gather after an earthquake in open spaces. We will do what we can to make the situation better. So open spaces being parks, community gardens, or parking lots even. After an earthquake, you do not want to be inside. It will not feel safe. It could be incredibly safe, but it will not feel safe. So you will not want to go inside. You will gather with neighbors outside where you can see the sky and nothing's going to fall on you. We have organized and we have put what we call hubs at lots of spots in the city. All these dots on the map are spots. The hollow dots, and there's just as many of those as there are solid ones, the hollow radio signals are spots that do not have organized neighbors yet. The city looked at a spot and went, yeah, that's a really good gathering spot, and it makes perfect sense. Like pea patches. Most people in the community know that there's a pea patch there. Most pea patches are open to the sunlight, don't have lots of trees or power lines over them. That would make a natural gathering spot. So the city has designated that as a hub. However, there's nobody organizing anything there. So it's just a spot on the ground at the moment. The radio signals that are solid on the center is a gathering spot, but neighbors are organized. They are thinking about this. They're meeting, they're doing drills, they're practicing, they put equipment there. So the ones we're going to talk about are the ones that are organized hubs. This is typically what the gear that the community has gotten together is put in. It's called a job box. They're really simple. Most of the times they will fit in the back of a pickup truck. That's about the size. You'll see them all over the city. Typically they have like parks equipment in them, rakes or shovels or chalk to mark baseball diamonds. A lot of people that know you have a hub in your community assume that when you open it, it's going to have food and water in it. We do not store food and water for the community. Nobody stores food and water for the community. The city has very, 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 very few spots where they store any kind of food and water. We are expected to get that stuff in our house and store it for our own households. So anyway, if you're looking at the hub box, it has tables and chairs and whiteboards and signs and caution tape and work gloves and magic markers and lots of paperwork. So the hub mission is to gather and share information and match needs and resources. Gather and share information. And this is information coming from wherever we can gather it. Neighbors walking up saying, hey, there's a power line down. We send out neighbors and we say, go check on the gas station. How are they doing? Or go check on the pharmacy. How are they doing? And they come back and they give us information. We put it on a whiteboard. We do work with ham radio operators in the city. So they are calling around to find out what's going on. They have the ability to talk to the city. They can find out what's going on. So we get a lot of information through ham radio. And then if the city is putting out information, like on Alert Seattle, we will take that information and we will put it up on a whiteboard, just like this, super simple. Happens to be, I think it's my hub. Our hub is near a tennis court. So we hang stuff on the tennis court fence. We have maps, we have whiteboards, and we just write stuff that the community would want to know about. So we gather and share information. There's a picture of us working with hub radio or ham radio operators. The other thing we do is we match needs and resources. This is just a couple of the different ways that we do it. As you can tell, it is all primitive. It is paper and pencil. We do not have computers. We are not relying on anything electronic. It is very, very low tech. So we are taking the person that has, that's a tarp, the person that has a tarp and the family that needs a tarp, and we're matching them up. The family that needs diapers and the family that has diapers they can share, and we're matching them up. The family that lost a puppy and the household that found a puppy, we're matching them up. The family that has a broken window and needs it fixed, and the able-bodied neighbor that has plastic that can get up to that second-story window and throw some plastic over it. We're matching them up. So we are matching needs and resources. Again, super low tech. We also have a volunteer area in the hubs, and it basically is doing those recon missions, sending folks out to go do stuff. I'm going to send a team of 3 people with shovels and I'm going to have them clean debris off this street. We have a system to manage volunteers because people will want to help. And that is a huge part of disaster recovery process, is managing your volunteers, making sure that they're not tripping over one another and they're doing very useful, productive things. They stay energized, you get more done. The other thing with the hubs is we have a way of collecting the man hours that have been donated to this recovery process. And that becomes very important when you're talking about FEMA and getting reimbursed. Everyone has skills. We also have an education area in the hub. We have tried to predict, to anticipate what educational needs the community will have. These are posters that most of the hubs have. Again, they're hanging on the fence in the tennis court in my community. And then we also printed stuff in different languages, how to handle down power lines. We've tried to gather information that we think would be helpful because Google will be down after the internet goes down. So Hub mission is to gather and share information. We match needs and resources. We organize volunteers and we educate. That's pretty much it. That was very fast. I have a little bit more information. I'm going to encourage you to keep learning. There is an earthquake early warning webinar put on by amazing folks at Washington Emergency Management Division. Here's information. There's also information on your handout. So it's during the day. It's a 10 o'clock webinar, which is kind of, not the greatest. They are going to videotape it and put it out on YouTube. So that will be available at some point, and I will probably send out a link to that once it's recorded and I know it's up there. And then also, I'm teaching a class through the community college, Create Your Rapid Exit Plan. What can you have ready to grab? If your house was on fire or you are jumping into the front seat of an ambulance and driving away in a hurry, what could you grab if you have time to reduce regrets? The next round of classes, I am going to do this again. I'm fairly happy with the setup, so I'm just going to repeat the same thing. Same set of 6 classes, 2 topics each, trying to keep it under 30 minutes a piece, starting on May 12th. That's a Wednesday. They're all Wednesdays. Please spread the word. Feel free to reach out. If you got any questions down the road, if you forgot what something on your to-do list stood for or any questions, please just reach out.